Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our third installment of our webinar series. Topic today is the three dimensions of value-based investing. I'm Andy Badertscher, if you're unfamiliar with me. And we're going to give about another minute and a half to allow others to sign on. So just hang tight with us while others log on. Thanks. And again, if you're here for the three dimensions of values-based investing, you're in the right spot. We're just hanging on here for about 30 seconds or so to allow others to join us. Okay, so let's get started here. Again, I'm Andy Badertscher of the Hummel Group. We will be hearing again from Jason Myhre here in a moment. And if you've joined us for a previous webinar or two, you'll remember Jason. Before I hand it over, I just wanted to run over our very brief ground rules. So looking at the list of attendees, I think many of you have been with us before, but it's a good reminder. And in case we have someone new, there's just really two quick rules. One, you should see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use that. It doesn't have to be a question per se, but if you have a comment or something, some kind of reaction, feel free to share that. We'd love your feedback. The only people that will see those are Jason and me. So don't be shy to give us your feedback or shoot us a question. The other ground rule is we hope you just relax, enjoy the conversation. You will not be sold something. So we're here to have an engaging conversation on the topic at hand. So don't feel like, there's a sales pitch coming to you at the end here. If you do recall last month, if you joined us, I shared really from my advisor perspective how I really got started in this topic of values-based investing about 2 years ago. And it was really rooted in a series of conversations I had with clients who basically were asking about where their investment dollars were ending up. What kind of companies were being capitalized, funded by these investment dollars. And I never really was comfortable with the answer I gave them because I really didn't give them an answer. I just basically shrugged it off and said it's too complex and hard to know where these dollars end up. So obviously we know that's not true. We can be aware of where our investment dollars are going and who they're funding. And so that truth brings the investment conversation to a whole different level. We all have values that we organize our lives around. So the question becomes, why would we leave our portfolio out of that discussion? So that's just been a really exciting avenue to walk down with clients who are interested in doing so. So I just wanted to kind of say that again. And I wanted to thank you all who have kind of walked with us down these three webinar series. And we mentioned this last time. We do want to send a thank you. You'll see it here. It's a tumbler that does have, it's probably backwards, but the Eventide tagline, investing that makes the world rejoice. So we want to hear a little bit more about that today. And that'll be coming to you as a thank you from Jason and myself. Be coming soon, that is. So Jason, if you don't mind taking it away here and leading us down the road.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I so appreciate you sharing just personally how you came to this conversation. And yeah, it's a big encouragement to me. And so I'm delighted to get to partner with you on this. And warm hello to all of you on the other end of the line. Welcome back. If you joined for one of those earlier webinars, it's good to be with you again. And the topic today is 3 dimensions of values-based investing. So this is just going to serve as a very helpful framework and introduction to just the key elements or dimensions of values-based investing. In case you're new to me, I'm Jason. Very nice to meet you. I'm with this company called Eventide. You can see our logo in the upper right. We're an investment company that's based in Boston. And so we put together investments that people like Andy use in working with clients to help them reach financial goals. Our particular specialty is values-based investing. So this topic is very near and dear to me. I spend the majority of my time as a public advocate for considering your values when you're making investment choices. So this is not even the first of these events I've done today, and I've got more still to come later. But yes, I want to underscore as well that this is not a pitch. We are really trying to help you to understand how the world of finance intersects with the world of your life. And so let's dive into it. And I'll start the topic by just asking you, what comes to mind when you think about investing? So our brains are really good at showing us images and movies. And so if you just think about investing for a moment, kind of look up into your mind, what sorts of images do you see? Whenever I'm in live audiences, I will, or doing this with friends, I'll typically hear things like this: account statements, ticker symbols. People might see talking heads on a news program reporting on whatever's happening in the market that day or what's expected to happen the next. Charts with zigzagging lines. We might think of Wall Street and its traders shouting orders of the den of the stock exchanges. Images like these. I call images like these the financial machinery that surrounds investing today. And it's certainly part of the deal. But many of us never really get to thinking about what is behind these images and the essence of investing itself. I want to share with you a quote from someone I've had the privilege of getting to know a little bit. This is Bill Kavanaugh from DePaul University. And he's got a great line here just describing what it feels like to be an investor. So I want you to try this on for size. He says, retirement accounts tend to just go into mutual funds, where as an investor, not only do I not have any idea how the companies that I have stock in are being operated, I don't even know what companies I have stock in. I can certainly relate to this. How about you? For many people, you put your money into an account, it ends up going into some mutual fund or other investment vehicle, and you really have no idea where your money is going, what kinds of companies you're supporting, and you have no idea where the profits are coming from, what the products and services are, the business activities that are generating the profits, that are funding the returns, that are funding your financial future. This can give us a sense of unease because it can feel as though what we're doing with our money is disconnected from what we value, and we wonder whether or not there's a correspondence there. To state the obvious, Andy said this at the beginning, we all have values, and these values in many ways, if we reflect on it, really define who we are as people, and they determine nearly all of the decisions we make in life. So probably the kind of vocation that you've pursued, how you're raising your children, what you give your time to, the causes that you support, the way you vote. I mean, you could go on and on. And so the obvious question, as Andy put it, is, shouldn't our portfolio also be reflective of our values? But how do we bring the things that we value together with the world of finance? It can be a tough question to answer. I'm going to introduce it to you the best way I know how, and that is to actually step into the shoes of a real family, get to know their values, and to see the way in which investing intersects. So I want to share with you the story of the Schwartz family. I know Blake Schwartz here personally. He is a Presbyterian minister who lives in Dallas. He's married to Julia, and together they have 3 children. This is Alice, Arthur, Margaret, and Nathaniel. Blake's story of investing begins at a young age. Here he is as a very young man with his grandmother. And he didn't get to know his grandmother very well because she passed away when he was still young. But before she passed, she established a trust fund investment account for Blake. So lucky guy, he was a trust fund baby. And he was to receive this trust fund when he turned 18 years old. So if we fast forward in his life to when he turns 18, he receives this trust fund, happy day. Or it should have been, because when he received this trust fund, he began to examine the financial statements of the trust fund, and you could see what the companies were that he owned. And this was troublesome to him because he discovered that actually 80% of the holdings were invested in a company called the Altria Group, which I don't know if you've ever heard of this company. This is their stock certificate. This is a big tobacco company. And the reason that this was very painful for Blake is the reason he didn't get to know his grandmother very well is that she passed away from lung cancer as a result of tobacco smoking. In fact, to make it more painful, this was the very company that his grandmother was a customer of that ultimately ended up claiming her life. Very sobering story. I do not relish sharing it with you, but it highlights something incredibly important that I hope all of us can grasp, and that's this. Investing is company ownership. At its most essential, what investing really is, it's not the charts. What investing is behind the scenes is it is a supply of capital to support business in exchange for ownership, the rights to receive any of the potential profits and growth. When we see investing this way, we can see that all of the profits and the growth are flowing from the activities of business, which can be something wonderful, as I'll share with you. But we have to admit it can also be something bad, as we saw in the example of Blake and that tobacco company and the story of his grandmother. So the first dimension of values-based investing is called avoid. And if you think about investing as company ownership, this avoid dimension involves questions like these. What kinds of companies do I not want to become an owner of? What are my non-negotiables? What are the things I simply cannot, in good conscience, take part in? Is there anything that I wouldn't want to profit from for the sake of my values? The world of investing is as wide as the world of business. And so in the same way that we may encounter problems with businesses out in the world, we can become investors of them. On the screen, I'm showing here some of the common problem areas that most investors are a part of through conventional investing. And so, some of these may not resonate with you, but I wanted to share with you some examples. So profits that come from abortion and abortion-related services, alcohol, animal cruelty, environmentally irresponsible actions, gambling, pornography, predatory lending, tobacco we already saw, vanity and luxury products, violent video gaming, weaponry, and the list goes on and on. These are just some examples. And I think one of the great innovations of values-based investing is to allow investors to express a desire to not come into contact with these issues and to actually avoid those bad profits. And so this avoid dimension, very simply, is you would express to Andy any convictions that you have, and he's able to help ensure that your investment portfolio is reflective of your conscience there. I want to return to the story of the Schwartz family. So Blake and Julia had their first child, Britton, a boy who is shown here. And Britton was born with a very tragic inherited disease. It's called spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's commonly referred to as floppy baby syndrome because babies that are born with SMA are limp and floppy at birth. And so this is actually the reason Britton is shown lying down here in his baby photo. It's a genetic disease, and it affects the body's ability to produce a needed protein. So the genetic code is broken in this one place where the body isn't able to make a protein that all of us, I'm sure, enjoy. And that is a protein called survival motor neuron. And it lives in our muscles. And it's what enables our muscles to gain strength and tone. And so you can imagine if you can't produce this protein, then your muscles really at birth, that's what you get in terms of muscle tone. And then it degrades from there. At the time of Britain's birth, the chance of making it to age 2 was just 20%, with a virtually 0% chance of making it to adulthood. Now, obviously, Blake and Julia were extremely heartbroken by this diagnosis, their first child, and they sought the entire world over for any treatment that would potentially save Britain's life. Unfortunately, there were no available treatments at that time, and Britton passed away when he was just 8 months old. 4 years later, they had their third child, Alice Arthur. And unimaginably, Alice Arthur was diagnosed with this very same disease, spinal muscular atrophy. But this time, the story was different because in just those 4 short years that had gone by, there was now a treatment for SMA. In fact, there were 2 available. And here she is on an airplane headed to the Ohio State University, where she would be the 13th baby to be enrolled in a new gene therapy to treat SMA. Gene therapy is a new innovation in the world of biotechnology that to me sounds a lot like science fiction. It's actually not too far off from this stock photo I've chosen here. It involves actually understanding where the genetic code is broken and then delivering a healthy copy of that broken gene into the body to effectively fix the problem at a root cause level. And so in the case of the gene therapy to treat SMA, it delivers the gene that codes for that missing protein, survival motor neuron. And so you give this treatment and the body is able to start producing this protein. The muscles are able to develop, gain strength and tone. And importantly, this supports survival. Alice Arthur received this treatment and it worked. I actually showed you her photo already. She is this bright young lady in the blue dress. She's 4 years old. She's happy, healthy, and oh, by the way, learning to read right now. She would not be here if it were not for that treatment. I spoke to Blake about the importance of investing, and he said this to me. I love this quote. He said, "As my eyes have been opened to God's redemptive purposes in the world and what he's doing, I've seen how investing can change people's lives." Very beautiful quote. The quote is a little odd, though, isn't it? I mean, why does he say investing can change people's lives? Wasn't it rather a biotech company that developed that therapy for Alice Arthur that saved her life? Why does he say investing here? Well, it actually goes back to this diagram I showed you. Investing is a two-way street. We tend to think about this bottom dimension, which is the flow of returns and profits coming our way. But it's a two-way street. It also involves a supply of capital in support of business, which means that not only is every investing decision an ethical decision, it's also an impact decision. You actually have this opportunity to help support businesses that are doing things like that healthcare company that developed that gene therapy. Do you know why there were 2 treatments available for Alice Arthur when there were none for Britain? Simple answer is business and investors who had the heart and capital to fund such important work. And man, is this exciting, I think, because investing goes from being a chart to actually being connected to this kind of innovation and to make a difference in the lives of others. And so this next dimension we call embrace, and it is to move to the polar opposite of that avoid dimension and to actually think positively, to ask, man, what kind of companies would I feel proud to own and be a part of? What kinds of businesses are truly seeking to serve society and human flourishing? The tagline that we've chosen for our company at Eventide is investing that makes the world rejoice, which I'm so proud of. We chose this because we wanted to set as our vision, not just this avoidance of ethical pitfalls, but actually what the goal is. The goal is to supply capital toward businesses that are creating blessing and rejoicing in the lives of others. This embrace dimension involves thinking positively. And so you're thinking big picture and you're saying, what needs exist in the world today? Like, for example, SMA, that business is right now positioned to address, but needs capital. And so you bring together the needs of the world with an investment opportunity. And there's an intersection here. So essentially we're looking for where can we grow money by investing in things that are supporting human flourishing. And at the intersection, we've identified a number of themes. This is a partial list. We have about 40 themes that we've identified that we're really excited about, including circled in blue here, pediatric and orphan diseases, which describes things like gene therapy for SMA. And we have a whole description of these themes in great detail if you want to get a hold of that and learn more. After identifying these themes, then you want to find excellent companies within those themes. And so you're asking questions about the management teams at the company, how they're treating customers, employees, suppliers, communities, the environment, and broader society. As you see, here you are as an investor, you're ultimately going to be connected to businesses, but then through businesses to the lives of others. This is what entails that impact. Here are some questions that I like to ask myself as a reminder of this. Is this company meeting an important human need? Are customers delighted? Do employees love their jobs? Are suppliers valued as strategic partners? Are communities better off for the company's presence? Is the environment being cared for and protected? It feels really good to know that not only is your retirement plan on track, but that also you can answer yes to these questions with the companies you're investing in. And so this is called Embrace, seeking to own companies that align with and express your values. Lastly, there's a dimension called Engage. Once you invest in a company, well, now you're an owner. And there's actually a power that comes with that. And so we can think about how we could use that power as an owner to partner with companies to continue on a path of excellence and to create still more value in the world. Now, this is typically something that investors don't do, but their investment managers do on their behalf. So here at my company, Eventide, for example, we take the values of, let's say, the Schwartz family, combined with the values of all our other investors, and use that collective set of values to engage companies and express those values to the management of companies, vote the proxy votes. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a requirement of being an investor. We vote our values on proxies. And we're always looking for ways to engage companies if we see something where there's an area for improvement. And I'll share with you an example of this a bit later on. So avoid, embrace, engage, the basics of values-based investing. Now, maybe your heart goes out to this approach, but there's a question that your head might have, and I want to address it here at the end, and that's this: what about performance? Here's the way that one person put it to me after one of these events last year. Hey, I appreciate the values-based investing point, but can we both agree that profitability is a core requirement? Can't just rely on good feelings to drive our investment decisions, right? This is a good question, right? Most people are investing and they need to get a good rate of return on this money because this is actually their financial future and their family's financial future. And so as much as we want to do good in the world, there's a requirement that this money has. And so we have to ask this question of how the values affect that. The best way to answer this is to show you the impact on performance with respect to each of these different dimensions. If you lump them all together, it can be a confusing answer. So I want to break it down and just talk about each in turn. So what would be the effect of avoid? So as a reminder, avoid would be, let's say in that example from the Schwartz family, let's say you chose to avoid the tobacco industry. Well, isn't the tobacco industry a very profitable industry? So if you're eliminating profitable industries from your investment portfolio, are you going to be able to do as well as another investor who doesn't have those convictions? Well, yes and no. I want to share with you a quote here. This is from John Hale. He leads sustainability research at a big big investment shop called Morningstar. And I think he's captured it well. Now, I'm going to swap out a couple of words in this quote just to make it a little bit more intelligible for you if you're not used to the investing world here. So follow along with me. He says, the idea that values-based investing is a recipe for underperformance is a myth. But like most myths, there is a kernel of truth to it. That avoiding things for values reasons can limit portfolio performance. We found evidence in the research that avoiding things can have a negative effect on your performance. So yeah, if you avoid the tobacco industry, and the tobacco industry is very profitable, and that's all you're doing is avoiding, then it probably is going to affect your rate of return. You probably will get a lower rate of return than your neighbor who doesn't have those scruples. Now, let me just pause here and say, I think there's an important thing we need to contemplate whenever we're talking about our values here, and that is this. What are your values worth to you? Let's say it did cost you a little bit. How much would it be worth it to maintain those convictions? I think this is a question that not many of us ask ourselves. We sort of say like, oh, I'm giving up a little bit of return here. Well, isn't it worth it if we're maintaining those convictions in life? That said, there is some good news here. He says, but research also finds intriguing evidence of a positive values-based inclusion effect. What he's describing is that embrace dimension, which is bolstered by company-focused research suggesting that firm-level sustainability performance is associated with better financial outcomes. Okay, so to summarize, yes, avoiding some of these problem areas may limit portfolio performance, but there is potentially an offsetting effect if you combine it with this more positive thinking. So we've got to talk about this embrace dimension. I think this is the key to bringing together the values and performance. I like to say that what's right is also smart, and you'll see what I mean here in a minute. I showed you this diagram earlier, which is a look at a business and all of the stakeholders that are connected to it. And so what I want to do is I want to illustrate for you why these relationships and how they're treated, why that matters to you in seeking performance. And I'll do it negatively and positively. So let's start with a bad example. Let's say a business is fixated on the bottom line. And so they're always looking to cut costs. And so they're thinking about cutting back on services or product quality to save costs, to boost margins, to increase the bottom line. Well, there's a problem with that because customers tend to resent that sort of business behavior. And so they only hang around for so long before they walk away and they tell others to steer clear. So this is not a good decision. When a business treats employees as cogs in the machine, labor, costs to be minimized, the employees hate that, right? So they tend to invest the bare minimum. They don't really invest their whole self into the mission of the business. That's not going to be good for the bottom line. When a business treats suppliers harshly, with very short-term thinking, driving hard bargains, the suppliers are going to probably meet expectations, but that's about it. When a business disregards the communities they operate in, those communities can come to see that company as a foreign corporation, kind of a curse in their community. And the communities will look to patronize a competitor if there is one. When a business exploits the environment, the business is exhausting the productive capacities upon which they depend. Now, that's in the long run. But in the short run, they can face risks of litigation, fines, catastrophes, all of which can hurt the bottom line. And when a business harms society, the world is made worse. But the business can also draw criticism, ire, condemnation. They can face boycotts, divestment, regulation, and all of that is going to affect their ability to generate those returns for you. So you can see the way in which values do matter. Now, let me give you the positive. When a business channels its creativity into improving value for customers, customers are delighted. And so they continue to be customers and they bring friends and family along. That grows the bottom line. When a business invests in employees as though they're human beings, because they are, those employees will in turn invest their whole selves, their creativity, passion, and energy into the mission of the business. Very powerful. When a business values suppliers as long-term strategic partners, those suppliers in turn will look for ways to help that business succeed. When a business invests in the local communities, the communities will value that business as a favorite local business, and they love to patronize it. When a business cares for and preserves the environment flourishes, and it's there to sustain the business again and again and again. And that we actually have a lot of examples where, take for example, the company Patagonia. They are known for simply just good care of creation, and as a result have enjoyed a very successful life cycle as a company. And when a business adds value to society, the world is made better. The business also often wins praise and admiration, awards and recognition, and oh, by the way, market share. And so here again, you can see the effect of values. None of these things show up in the financials. But when we assess businesses at this more human level, understanding the nature of value creation versus value extraction, we can see the wisdom in this principle. For those of you that like this sort of thing, there's a couple of books contained in the slides here. Here's one on customers, which is excellent. Here's one making the case that employees and good jobs drive performance. This is from an MIT researcher. I like this quote from Ed Freeman, who's a professor at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. And he says, business ethics shouldn't be an oxymoron. It should be two words that are redundant to each other. Thinking about stakeholders, those groups that I showed you, is thinking about business. It's smart. And thinking about stakeholders is thinking about ethics. It's right. It comes to the same thing. This is why I like to say what's right is also smart. We tend to think of values as only getting in the way of performance, but when we have that more holistic perspective, we realize that because business is a human enterprise, considering how we treat our fellow man and woman is actually very wise. All right, finally, engage. How does that affect performance? Well, each of these engagement with companies is different. So it's hard to summarize, but I'm going to give you an example of what one of these engagements looks like, and you can draw your own conclusions. So a few years ago, we invested in a large online retail business, and they offered, as a part of their business, a branded credit card. So it had the company logo on this credit card, and people could use that credit card to make purchases and earn rewards and discounts. I'm sure you're familiar with this sort of thing. As we were looking at this credit card, though, what stood out to us is the interest rate seemed really high. And as we began looking around at comparables, it was very high. In fact, so high that we began doing some soul searching and just asking questions about, well, man, how high is too high? We have a view, and maybe you do too, that credit can be a useful tool, enabling people to purchase needful items, but it can also be a trap. And especially if the interest rates are high, if you fall into that trap, it's very difficult to climb out. Ultimately, we concluded that the interest rate was just too high. So what do? We were investing in the company. So do we sell it because it no longer meets our values? Well, that might be the right decision. But since we were investors, we said, hey, let's engage them first and bring this issue to their attention. They may not be fully aware of it or its implications. And so we did that, not as kind of pious activist investors, but partners who wanted to help bring light to this issue. And because of our approach, we gained a listening ear. And over a series of conversations, the company became increasingly persuaded of our view, to the extent that they decided to terminate that credit card vendor and get a new one whose interest rates were well within the bounds of the fair and the ethical. Now, we looked at that and we said, man, amazing. Now this company is more fully reflective of our values and convictions. But the company looked at it and said, we've improved our business. We've actually improved the value proposition to customers that make purchases using credit. So I think you can see the way in which, even here with these engagements, it crosses over the boundaries between ethics as well as performance. I think this business is better off today. 3 reasons why I think you should consider it. This is not a sales pitch for my company. This is a sales pitch for values-based investing. Number one, we can pursue integrity with our investments. One of the most important pursuits in life. As we own companies that create blessing while avoiding those that cause harm, we can more accurately and completely target this positive impact, directing our dollars to advance the global common good, all the while seeking out performance as we're partnering with companies that prosper by serving well the needs of others. Hopefully you can see that our values make a difference when we invest. And I'll leave you with this quote as we conclude. This is from the New York Times last year. I think they got it right here. They said, try thinking about it this way. Living your values in every way, as best you can, often delivers a positive emotional return. So any realignment of your portfolio can offer more value than you think. If you're like me, financial value is certainly important. Performance and these kinds of things, all very important. But I'm not a one-dimensional character that only cares about rationally maximizing returns. I have this whole host of values. And what's most important to me is to live this life of wholeness, where what I believe is reflected in every facet of my life, including investing. And making a change to your portfolio can often deliver that sort of positive emotional return where you just feel so much better about the whole thing and are excited about it. With that, I'm going to welcome Andy back on the line to shepherd us through the remainder of our time here.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. I just wanted to thank you and your colleagues at Eventide for providing the wisdom and insight that you've been able to share with us last couple of months. So thanks a lot for your time. Questions. Looks like we get off the hook yet again, Jason. No questions for us, no tough ones. So all in all, I hope that this series or what you were able to join us for challenged you or encouraged you to think about investing from a new angle, a new dimension. This topic is important to me. It's important to Hummel Group. You can see my picture here along with my colleagues. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions, if you would just want to explore this further. There are tools out there that can, in effect, analyze your current portfolio that might help uncover or expose or shed light on particular values that you might be interested in knowing. Do I own companies that are in any particular fields or interests? So those do exist. You can kind of take an x-ray to your portfolio if you'd like. We'd be happy to help. So with that, we'll officially close out what I've called our summer series here on values-based investing, which I guess is appropriate. I saw that summer ended exactly a week ago, last Wednesday. So again, on behalf of Hummel Group and Eventide, thanks for joining us. Have a great finish to 2021 and a great day. Thanks a lot.